Okay, Billy, another reminder to the mic in front of your face.
It's two hands, right?
Dude, what do I do with my hands? This is the whole interview just sitting here like this. Like, you can put your hands down. Like,
No, he's talking like this.
okay.
He just want to make sure it doesn't stabilized.
Okay.
All right, welcome to the Real Alaska Podcast. I'm here with my co-host.
Billy Hughes.
We are here with my homie.
Marshall Pickering.
And who are you with, Marshall?
I work for Hub International. It's a commercial insurance brokerage firm. It's an international firm, but I work here in the Alaska market, specifically in Anchorage.
Sweet, dude. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
I appreciate you having me. It's good to be
Yeah,
here.
man. Finally got you on here.
Yes.
You know,
Put me down.
I got. You know, he finally said yes. I pressured him. I think I offered to pay him cash. I'm
He
just
knew I
kidding.
needed a business insurance policy. That's why.
Yeah, that's not necessarily. No, just no. Just no. We go way back, but Justin, I appreciate you having me, though.
Of course, man. All right, so your gamut of commercial insurance is a whole wheelhouse of stuff.
Sure.
And I'm sure people who aren't in the business world probably have no idea all the different things that you need insurance for.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Big time.
like, having been a business owner now for a little bit of time, like, it is, I mean, it's impressive how many different things you can get sold on insurance for, what you actually need, and then, of course, like, why you actually need it, right? So if you want to kind of break into what you do and, you know, like, that whole world of
Sure.
commercial insurance.
Yeah. So my career specifically now is I do employee benefit consulting for businesses. I start out in the business on the business-to-business sales side, working for a carrier. But now that I'm working with a brokerage firm, as a brokerage provide insurance in a couple different areas.
Yeah.
My specific is employee benefits, but we also do property and casualty, wealth management, personal lines insurance, which, you know, I'm sure everybody's aware of that. Once you get in the adult world, you're going to have coverage on your car, your home, things like that. So we do a wide range of different coverages for whether it be businesses or individuals.
That's good to know.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So of all of those different types of policies, like what are some like the most common policies that someone should expect if they're talking with you? Like, let's say Justin Millette walked in, I'm a sole proprietor, business owner.
Okay.
What should I expect to get, or what would you recommend potentially to have as just like a mom and pop operation? Like what would be a good like starter area to start having that conversation?
Well, I think that starts with the really when it comes down to like if you're starting out as a business, right?
Yep.
You are going to need some personal liability coverage, umbrella maybe. That's not really my expertise. That's more of the commercial lines. We call it commercial lines, which is like more property and casualty.
Yep.
You know, that area, definitely recommend you meet with a professional, a brokerage firm. Most brokerage firms work with small business owners. So you start with that, you sit down with them, they'll talk about, what kind of coverage you need from a liability standpoint. That's probably the biggest thing. So depending on what business you have or what you're in, you're going to have certain coverages. Yeah. Like if you have like in the auto business, you're going to have a lot of auto liability coverage just off the rip. So you're going to have to do, insurance on basically all the assets that you own in some way, shape, or form. But there's no, outside of certain requirements, the industry is heavily regulated, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
But, it's ultimately your responsibility as a business owner to insure your stuff, your things, to an appropriate level that prevents you from taking a loss, right?
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. Everybody doesn't like to pay insurance. That's an obvious fact, right? But, you also have to look and be honest about, okay, if this were to just be wiped out, let's say you have a building that you own, something were to happen and you didn't have the proper coverage for it, then you're going to expect to take a loss, right?
So that's where I'm at. I have a business that we just started up, and I just went through the SBA process. They hit me up today and were like, hey, you need to get like an umbrella policy to cover all this stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, on the personal liability stuff.
Yeah, so I'm going to work on that after we walk out of here, actually.
Yeah, and then honestly, umbrella policies are good for almost anybody. You can get on your personal umbrella, which is great to have just as a stopgap in case something happens. Something comes after you personally, you can have just a policy. And they're actually relatively inexpensive.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
I know some insurance agents do that on top of like errors and omissions to have that additional coverage.
Yep.
Yeah, it's obviously nobody really thinks about how quickly something could, like, just a minor slip and fall or whatever else, right, could escalate into 6 and 7 figures.
Oh,
But on the other side of the coin, right? So doing benefits. What do you see, I guess, as far as like on the benefit side of things? Like what are you seeing as, like, I think the biggest conversation that we're having right now is employee retention.
Yep.
Right? Like you've got the same amount of employees in Anchorage, and you've got all these employers that are fighting for skilled employees. So like, what are you seeing on your end that employers are trying to offer and incentivize employees to stay with them or attract new employees?
It's a good question. I think overall, in Alaska, and specifically, we're talking Alaska, it's very difficult to provide the insurance that employees want. What everybody wants ultimately is a group health policy, right? Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, you name it, right? So that way you have coverage in place, and if you can, in case you need to go to the providers that you need to go to, you have children, pretty much everybody wants that.
Yep.
Obviously. Just in case something happens, or if you have recurring medications you're taking, people want coverage for that.
That's where it gets really expensive.
And I have some statistics we can get into to talk about how expensive it really is. Alaska has one of the highest healthcare costs in the country, which leads to higher healthcare premiums. So we, as Alaskans, are definitely feeling the pinch in that regard, and that goes for both employers and employees.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's so expensive to insure here, specifically in Alaska?
A couple major factors, I would say: limited access to care, especially in areas that are more rural. We live in Anchorage, the biggest city in the state by a wide margin. You're not going to have too many issues finding the right provider in Anchorage compared to in these other communities, right?
Yeah, right.
So limited access to care, that leads to higher costs. It's a higher cost for the medical providers to bring up qualified professionals, and so that's going to lead to higher wages, which is good for healthcare workers, right? That's ultimately a good thing. Also, just in general, it's just a hard market, and I think it's hard to when you're talking about logistics, it's a very expensive state, as you guys all are aware of. Shipping costs are higher here for devices. It's just the whole state, when you really think about it, is just primed to be expensive to do business in, with any business, right? And the healthcare is especially that. Now, another factor in that too is lack of carriers in the market as well. In the property and casualty space, you have quite a lot more options when it comes to, like we talked about earlier, getting general liability, like auto insurance, things like that. There's more carriers in that market. It doesn't necessarily mean it's, inexpensive to get coverage, but when you compare the amount of carriers in this market that people are looking for, there's just a lack of options.
So you think that reduced competition probably inflates price a little bit?
Exactly, yeah. And like, for instance, Primera Blue Cross Blue Shield is the largest carrier in the state by a wide margin. They own, I've heard numbers, and this is not, an official statistic, but 70 to 80% of group insurance, health insurance
It's through them.
Is through Primera.
Yeah.
They had a lot of leverage too. I was been part of some of those negotiations. They're pretty heavy.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what I do on a yearly basis with my clients, with the companies that I work with, is I meet with them, prior to the renewal coming out from the insurance carrier. We talk about our strategy going into that, in a couple different scenarios, what if this is the percentage increase? And it's almost always an increase.
Yeah.
On the premiums.
Of course.
There's some cases that you get a decrease, but that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
But then when the renewal comes out, they could give you a number that is higher, usually higher, not lower than what you're anticipating. But depending on the size of the company, you can get claims data on what's actually going on in the group in terms of their health and some of the major claims that are happening. But it's always an increase pretty much all the time.
Yeah, when we were shopping insurance, just like family side, right? We got Blue Cross Blue Shield, but just like 3 of us.
Yep.
So it's it's a minimal policy, but it seemed like a big driver was a lot of the specialty care, you know, is 40, 50, 60% higher up here than it is just
That is,
a small flight to Seattle, you know?
Yeah, there's a lack of, from that specialty area, there's a lack of providers, and coming back to what like you were asking about why it's so expensive, that is a big factor. There was a couple regulatory changes that happened recently, last couple years, where before there was a rule in place called the 80th percentile, which is a big contentious rule that they put in place years ago, and I could be describing it wrong when I'm telling you about how it works, so don't quote me word for word on this, but basically how it worked is they need to figure out a way, if you were an out-of-network provider, what to charge people if you were to come in there with, again, they're out-of-network, so you don't have a carrier that's getting, negotiated rates up front for this stuff, right? So they had to figure out a way to base the pricing on it. The state did, and so they basically said that they're going to price at the 80th percentile for that particular charge. That's in layman terms, right? So that was a big.
Everyone's out of network
in a particular area specifically, right? Let's say dermatology is like all the providers are out of network in this area.
Right.
Well, then they're just going to say whatever the 80th percentile is. So
it's like whatever you want to make your rate at.
So as time goes on, they keep charging more and more and more, and there's no insurance company to say, hey, let's negotiate a price for these charges if people are coming in for whatever that is that dermatologist does, right? So that was a big issue. We did get that basically repealed a couple of years ago. The state did, and because of the price transparency laws that was passed into law federally. So there were some protections on people that made it so that they don't get basically gouged on that.
Yeah,
that's something I like about other countries. Like if you go to Mexico or whatever, and you go to the doctor, it's like a restaurant. They have all the charges and all the stuff up front. You're like, okay, cool. I know exactly what this is going to cost.
That's a great point. And ultimately, I think that working in this industry, working with as basically an intermediary between the client and the insurance carrier to help drive costs down for my client, I know that the system is basically completely broken.
Right.
If I'm being perfectly honest. And I'm not going to point fingers to anybody. I just think that this system has evolved to where it is today from a mixture of factors. It's, we're living in a capitalist society. People are in it to make money. Healthcare entities, whether it be major hospitals, small primary care doctors, all are in the business to make money. Health insurance carriers, you add that complexity on top of it, and you add in drug costs, and we have, if you are in an acute injury scenario, I think America is probably the best place to get care. Right. If you break your leg, you go to a hospital, you're going to probably get the best care. Now, from a chronic disease standpoint, there's a lot of debate to have whether that's handled properly in the United States, and for what's your value that you're getting. Right. Because you factor in the insurance costs in addition to the healthcare you have to pay for yourself as out-of-pocket costs keep going up. You're basically paying a lot for the care that you're getting in the United States. So it's not necessarily the most value that you're going to get. And I like the fact when you do travel, it's regularly posted. You can see there's transparency on what the cost is. And that's one of the biggest negatives that we have in our system today is it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. You don't really know what's going on between the insurance carrier and the provider. We don't get those details.
Yeah. No, you don't find out until you get the bill. One of the many usually.
Well, then not even that, but you go to the ER and then they give you 2 Advil, and then the next thing you know, you have on your bill is 2 Advil for $250, and you're like, dude, I could buy 400 bottles of Advil for $250. Yep. Why are you charging me for $250 for 400 milligrams of Advil? It's like, that doesn't quite line up, right? It's just, bag of saline. I'm sure the hospital pays $6 or something like that, but then they're charging you an astronomical amount plus the nurse's time, plus the doctor's time, plus whoever else sees you, right? And it's never just one bill.
Yeah, correct.
It's like you think you're paying a bill, and then you get like 5 more bills, and you're like, what the hell?
Well,
Dude, like,
That's how it is when Allison had a baby. We just kept getting bills. I was like, where's
so who are these? I don't even know who this is. So,
gosh?
Yeah, no, I think a particular example in that makes people just roll their eyes in disgust and frustration is when you go to have a surgery.
Yeah.
You check to see that the provider is in network, right? The hospital.
Yep.
You go under the knife. The anesthesiologist comes in. I know this for a fact. This has happened in the past. You go under the knife. You get the bill, and the anesthesiologist is out of network.
oh shit.
So you get a huge bill because the out of network and in network charges
Oh, way different.
are way different.
Yeah.
Out of network is, and I've seen most limits be 45,000.
Jesus.
And so you're like, what the heck is this? And so that was a big issue that we had too, that we, as a, industry, being, brokers, we try to fight with that too.
Yeah.
And it's just, how is a person going to know
They're
what
not.
to ask?
Yeah.
I would think the average person wouldn't even necessarily think to ask that.
Well, I think it's just so complex and so confusing of a process.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what layperson is ever going to know that to check that all these people, right? The surgery center, the doctor doing the surgery, the staff, right? Because it's not just the surgeon, it's the nurses, right? In the OR, then you have the anesthesiologist, right? They all have to be in network.
Right.
Like, how do you know? Like, unless you go through surgery, you get
And then you gotta,
then you learn, right? But you learn the hard way. You're like, God damn.
that's
dude.
like the unfortunate way to go about it too.
Yeah, I just think that we had our industry. It's an expo. It's like a conference that we had last week, and we had a think tank discussion with some of my colleagues and peers, competitors, and whatnot, and insurance carriers were there because they're partners of ours, right? Like we maintain good relationships. We negotiate with these carriers. But even they understand that the system that we're in is unsustainable in terms of, inflation's bad. Everybody's feeling the pinch on, grocery prices going up, asset prices inflating. The rate of inflation when it comes to healthcare costs is astronomically high.
Oh yeah.
And so if you really think about it, we can't keep going down this road. There needs to be top-down changes.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this, and everybody's got great ideas, but I struggle sometimes with figuring out what is the single best, what's the single thing that if I could wave a wand, I would change it. It would be just to make it as simple as possible for people to know what they're paying before they go in.
Yeah.
Like almost like a quote. Like
Well, you
when
can get that
Plus-
as a state. The state, you can actually ask people now, and they're required to give you a quote now.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Upfront.
good to know. I'll have to put that in my toolkit.
But they actually, I remember when I would go to a provider, they actually listed that, like there was like a little pamphlet that said that if you ask for a quote. But people sometimes just forget that and don't
Well, it's
know
like,
it.
yeah, but at the same time, it's like if you're trying to get care, right? Unless it's like a chronic issue or some surgery that can be scheduled out. But if you're walking in for like an acute injury or acute issue, you don't have time to get a quote. And like more or less, like how
Car wrecks, that kind of stuff.
I mean,
you don't think
just a bunch of stuff.
On that though, so if you have a group health plan with
Sure.
like Premier, Aetna, if it's an emergency situation, it's always going to be treated as a network. Just so you know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big issue that some people have.
Didn't Moda increase their pricing like 20% this year?
I don't know I can't remember what the exact figure is, but it was, so there's a difference between group health and then individual market.
Okay.
So if you're shopping on the individual market, there's a really concerning, I don't want to get too in the weeds with this, but
Come on, rabbit hole at Marshall.
Well, no, the thing is, because I'm not really super knowledgeable, because actually this talk was like the DOI, the head of the DOI, the Department of Insurance, gave a presentation at the expo, but I had to drop off my colleague at the airport. So I missed what she was talking about, but I heard from a coworker that it could potentially go up even further next year if certain things happen with the Trump administration, some of the changes that are happening. So when I heard that, I was like, oh boy. So if you think 20% or whatever it is, again, I can't remember the number, but yeah, it did go up quite a bit on both individual and group market. I know that for a fact.
Jesus, how do they expect people to pay for it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, so if you ask the question, what do you address with your, prospects or clients about what insurance to get? Really, it just boils down to what is if your goal is retention,
what you can afford.
What you can afford.
Yeah.
And there's actually quite a few, because I've been getting a lot of
catastrophic policy only.
well, so that's what I did before was I sold, disability, accident policies, cancer policies that would pay you cash, kind of like Aflac, you pay a premium, and if you get injured and you have an accident policy, it pays you a certain amount depending on what type of injury it was, what treatment you got for it. I'm seeing a lot of employers that can't afford medical insurance, go that route, offering, the premiums are relatively low, but I just think you have to find a way within your budget, working within your budget, and that's hard for employers to figure that out. That's what you need to talk to a professional that actually knows what they're, what would fit within your budget, right? Because when I talk to people and companies that have never offered health insurance or that are kicking the tires on that and seeing like, okay, I got a quote like 6 years ago. Yeah. I just want to see what it is now. They are blown away. They're like,
it's like
what happened?
200% in 6 years? It's got to be that's being super like,
it depends. It depends. I mean,
I hope it's not 200% that much.
Honestly,
6 years, but
the reality is so how it works for any group, just so any of your listeners or watchers, you want to know how that process works. If you're an employer that's under 50 employees, it's fairly easy to get a quote. You just talk to a broker. They'll take your census of all your employees, the demographics of the average age, basically. And the carriers will spit out a quote and tell you exactly what the rates are, because they're all state filed rates when they're under 50.
Gotcha.
And so they file those rates with the state and say, this is what we're going to charge. There's a negotiation. I don't know how the whole process works on that end, but they spit out what the numbers are going to be. That's how you know what those increases are every year, because they have to go through that process with the state and get it approved.
Interesting.
And so it's easy to kind of figure out what the costs are. But the tricky part is, I've had this happen before, where an employer will say, I have 20 people that are interested. I have 20 employees, and then we'll quote it, and the price is X, and they're like, okay, that works. But it also it all depends on the actual final enrollment. Then they'll re-rate it at the end.
God, dude.
Yeah,
so you think you're getting a certain price, and then you enroll, and then they're like, well, I mean, it's actually this price now.
And it's like almost always higher too. You're like, oh boy, you thought you were paying $800 an employee, now it's $900. So then, you have to be careful with that too. So that's one of those other that kind of like.
Yeah, that 100 difference for 50 employees.
Well, dude, it adds up, man. Yeah.
Big time. Well, and also, employers are required under 50 to, pay 50% of the premium.
Yeah.
So as an employer, like $50 more per person. That's if they're only paying 50. If they're paying more, it's even more.
Yeah.
It's just unsustainable, the rising in the costs. And ultimately too, like I think historically, the Affordable Care Act passed in 2010, aka Obamacare, right? So, one of the stipulations that one of the good things I think that came out of that was they got rid of pre-existing conditions from, being able to disqualify people for pre-existing conditions. I think that was pretty hard for people to, qualify for a lot of insurance. And it might be something fairly minor too. Again, this was before I even got into the industry, but, and then also they got rid of the limits, the annual limits. Most policies used to have $1 million limit.
Yeah. Which, I mean, dude.
It can happen very quickly.
Yeah.
So when they got rid of that, it's actually, I don't know, I wish I would have done a little bit more research on that part, but, seeing what the average costs have risen since that passed and came into effect, how much they've gone on average, looking back like the last 30 years when Obamacare passed 2010, over the last 15 years, what the increases have been. I mean, I'm fairly confident it's been, higher than the average was before that, due to some factors, but that might be one of them.
Yeah, and if you don't have limits,
right, you take the lid off of it.
Well, I think too, like I'm not sure how much you've watched or learned about like these specialty drugs.
Oh yeah.
Are you talking about like Ozempic
gene
or
therapy,
that kind of stuff? Okay.
Ozempic's more. It's a GLP-1. It's designed around diabetes management, lowering the GLP-1s. Or I'm not super well versed in that, but Ozempic is basically now a weight loss drug. I'm sure you.
It's like off-label.
It's like a second off-label,
but it's not cheap.
No,
it is not cheap.
Well, it was like some of the drugs. I mean, this was one of the things that the Trump administration brought up was Medicaid was paying like $5,000 for a drug, but if you were a cash buyer, paying $200. I was like, why is the taxpayer paying a difference of $4,800?
That's pretty wild. It's because of their negotiated rates. And so when I was working in healthcare, so one of the staff had brought that up to me. She's like, if you want to save money, the cheapest way to do it is to pay cash. And then
Which is wild to me. Why is it not the same cost overall? You know what I mean?
It goes down to reimbursement rates that the insurance carrier negotiates with the provider. Sometimes it's just easier for them too, just to take cash payment too, just not have to deal with the whole process of, going back to the carrier, filing the claim and all that.
Yeah,
It's just easy.
so you can pay cash and then file it with your provider.
I know, but
After the fact.
$4,800 difference.
Yeah, that I've seen some pretty high figures in that, like where it's a difference of that much, but
Substantial.
it never hurts to especially if it's a provider that's, somebody you've been going to, and you're like, hey, what would, if I paid you cash, what would it be? Just ask. I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah, I didn't realize that Fred Meyer had gone out of network for Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yep.
Right. So
The pharmacy.
Yeah. So I had to get some antibiotics for my ear when we went diving.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh shoot, okay. And it was just like standard like penicillin, right? And I'm like, okay. Well, they're like, well, you're out of network, and I was like, crap. I was like, well, what's the cash price? He's like, oh, $6.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what's the insure price? It was like $84, and I was like, here's $6.
Yeah, $6 for you, and transaction complete.
What the heck, dude? I'm like,
Whoa.
this is wild. So I was like, I'm just gonna freaking just pay $6.
It's funny you mentioned that because I used to go to Walgreens. Now I go to Bernie's Pharmacy, which is a good friend of mine. And I remember when I was going to Walgreens, though, I remember I was filling a prescription in particular, and they have these discount programs for pharmacy.
Yeah.
They'll usually just say, hey, do you want to run this through insurance, see what the cost is, or do you want to see what it costs? And these are just
discount program?
Just discount program that's just
Yeah.
readily available for anybody.
Anybody.
And it was cheaper to use the discount program.
Yeah.
It's like, why would I have my insurance pay for
That's
it?
why I like
Doesn't-
Bernie's, because they have it posted up on there.
Yeah. Didn't Mark Cuban create like a discount program like that?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. And I'm
Is it still going?
I think so. And I think it's actually gaining traction in the market.
Yeah.
And I haven't done too much research into that and like what makes it so, price effective. But
I think they're trying to cut out the middleman.
yeah, and that's, oof.
Well, the scary part for me is that
That look was
these insurance companies, they're
another rabbit hole.
negotiating rates for these drugs.
yeah.
And then in a way, don't let me ever speak, but in a way, wouldn't that incentivize providers to then prescribe said drugs rather than
Not sure.
Yeah. So I don't know if you ever watched that movie Scrubs or that show Scrubs.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I saw
yeah.
Scrubs. Yeah.
That pharmaceutical rep would walk in,
Yep.
just absolute, just gorgeous woman, right? And then she would have like food and all this like
For
lobbying,
lunches.
lobbying big time for
Yep.
pharmaceutical. That was like definitely super unethical. They definitely got the screws put on them in that regard. But yeah, I mean, if you're a doctor being paid by a pharmaceutical company to push certain drugs,
Right.
that's a blatant, in my opinion, conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Blatant conflict of interest.
Yeah.
That's like me paying you to come on a podcast. I'm just kidding. No, but honestly, it's the whole system is kind of built around incentives and
Right.
how do we continue? And also, I think this is another overarching theme that I think hopefully we can start to work on, which is the chronic disease issue. And Alaska's got a very, very big issue with that too.
Yeah.
The healthcare system doesn't want people, truthfully, to get better.
Well, of course, there's money in it.
Pharmaceutical drugs is a perfect. We're the only one of two countries that allow pharmaceutical companies to market on TV.
it's wild, dude. I hope they get rid of that.
And
I don't understand why they have to market on TV.
It's literally every commercial.
well, if you I don't watch news, but anytime I'm sitting at the airport and some news channels on one of the TVs and I'm just sitting there looking at it, every other commercial is pharmaceutical drug. So there's an incentive for these networks. They're getting paid big money to advertise this stuff, and then they're also trying to convince doctors to hey,
Yeah.
prescribe my drug. It's FDA approved, which I don't know if you've followed up on how much the FDA is doing right now. There's a lot of shady stuff that's going on with the
Oh,
FDA.
of course. Yeah, there's multiple documentaries that you can watch on the FDA targeting people, right? And like doctors, companies, etc., because they're not the big drug companies.
What kills me is the percentage of drugs that, and I don't know the exact figure. I want to say it's like 70 or 80%. I read that somewhere, that get pulled after they have FDA approval because they're not safe.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah, I mean, you're the regulatory body that's supposed to be, deeming these drugs safe, and to find out later down the road that, oh yeah, we goofed up on that. Sorry, but also we charged you an arm. Like, look at the opioids, OxyContin.
That's a good example.
Great
OxyContin
example.
is still probably a very really really bad issue that we have.
Yeah.
I don't know. I refuse to take those.
Yeah.
Even when I'm, I haven't had a surgery in a long
Opiates,
time.
yeah.
But opioids, I refuse to get on that stuff.
Have you seen that? There's a show on Netflix about that.
There
yes,
is.
The Fall of House of Usher is kind of like a spoof on that. Have you seen that show?
I have not.
Oof.
It's worth checking out.
Is it good?
Yeah, it's good, and definitely not. Do not let Levi watch that. It's pretty gory. But it basically follows the story of a family that starts or takes over as CEO of a pharmaceutical company that creates basically OxyContin. In this alternate reality, they make billions of dollars. They make a deal with the devil to never basically get prosecuted forever, basically. And then the whole thing just unravels. And it's pretty grotesque, but it's good though.
I know I was following the FDA guidelines as like in drug therapies and how they approve drug therapies for a while. There was a documentary on the Brzezinski Clinic down in Texas. Did you ever hear about this?
I think I did, actually.
So they were like kind of making their own like cancer like medication in-house, right? And and so they started curing a bunch of different cancers that were typically uncurable, especially in children, right? And so but the FDA came in, and even like the FBI came in, and they were like rating him a bunch, and like he had been to court a bunch, but it's because he wouldn't complete FDA trials. And part of that was because in order to pass an FDA trial, you have to subject your patients to your therapy and then the standard treatment of care, right? And how it meshes. And he didn't want to put his patients on chemotherapy. So he's chemotherapy is really harmful. I'm not subjecting my patients to that just to pass an FDA thing.
Right, he took an oath and took it serious.
Yeah. And so that's what he said. I was like, I took an oath not to harm my patients. He's like, there's just no way you're pushing chemotherapy on patients and not, saying that this is not an issue, right? Yeah. So he didn't want to do that. And of course, the FDA didn't like it. And of course, the whole pharmaceutical world, selling $25,000 chemo bags didn't like it either.
Oh, big time.
And he had this massive multiple raids, all this stuff. That the documentary is like, it just makes you just pissed.
Well, how many cases are like that just never got
televised?
Out
a lot.
I mean, I don't even want to know how many people that got screwed on that.
Yeah,
that had good intentions. Yeah, and I think ultimately, it's sad that it takes we have a government body that puts the squeeze on people, and using law enforcement on top of that. It's just shameful.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. No, it's wild.
I will have to watch that one.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
It's weaponization of those systems.
It is. I mean, we've seen weaponization of multiple government entities over the years, right? Or the media, right?
you can see that stuff in all the elections. It was really prevalent.
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen with RFK?
Well, I think if we can get a lot of the harmful chemicals and ingredients in food, I mean, ultimately, think about it. If you are consuming small amounts of poison every day,
daily,
for 20, 30 years, I mean, don't be surprised if you get really sick. I mean, and I really do think that, if you look at the ingredient list on a lot of, I have a habit of just doing this just naturally, just if I'm just checking something out I never use.
I'll talk myself out of stuff when I read the labels. I talk myself out of it.
Yeah,
this one's fine.
And recently, they've done a lot of advancement with genetics and all that kind of stuff in the last 10 or 20 years. But what they found was these pollutants actually cause mutations in your genetics, and you passed these mutated genetics to your kids. So time over time, so it's these forever chemicals are theoretically being passed.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you've traveled to Europe. You've eaten food in other countries. You don't feel as bloated. You don't feel as, stuffed.
Yeah.
That's like the thing that I feel most people when they travel, like, man, I feel great. Like my whole body feels better. My skin looks better.
Yep.
It's just amazing that these countries that we've allowed in this country, this to happen. And ultimately it's about money.
100%.
Right? You know, and honestly, like I'd pay more for food if it was just better in general, better for you.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a way to make it like more affordable and still do it naturally and more organically. I don't know. That's not my area of expertise.
I can't remember the stats, but it was an astronomical amount of ingredients in American food was illegally banned in the EU.
Yeah.
It's quite a lot.
It was a substantial amount. And I'm like, obviously they got, but went to Europe this year, right? And this last year. And then like you could eat whatever and you didn't have that, like you said, that bloated, full, like, I feel like I could just snack all day and never really just feel kind of bleh.
Well, I also think too, our lifestyles, especially as Alaskans,
Well,
very sedentary.
we also walk everywhere, bike, Yeah,
I mean, you're just in Japan is another good example of that. When I went to Japan, like you're walking constantly. There's really not a reason to own a car in a lot of these countries. If you think about it, that have good public transportation, and it's just a easier way to travel.
Yeah.
And we don't have that here. It's a car, driven society. You don't.
And you see those differences in the physicality of the population, right?
Yeah, I think I have some statistics on that about talking about how like 7 in 10 Alaskans are,
obese,
considered obese.
Yeah.
Right. Like some high figure like that. It's gnarly.
Yeah. I mean, sedentary lifestyles, you got certain population groups that are really obese, it's just because of diet, the availability of food.
Yeah.
Dude, the wintertime was like, how often do you see people in the winter out and about? Like, everybody sits in their house, right? Hibernation.
Like hunkers down,
and then summertime, you see everybody. You're like, oh my God, how you been?
Eating a lot of food
Yogi.
and doing nothing. Well, I think
so it's
going back to kind of the insurance talk and what like people need to do to keep costs down. Obviously, there's certain things that are out of your control, health-wise.
Yeah.
The accidents can occur.
Yep.
There could be an illness that hits that's somewhat unpredictable. But for your average person that lives, that has a family, lives their own life, you ultimately have a big responsibility to take care of your health, eat right, take care of your body.
Exercise.
That's going to lead to less costs that you incur. Oh, look at that. I've been trying to get him to go to the gym for like weeks.
I knew if I flex, he would just give me a hard
I've been
time.
trying to get him to go to the gym with me for weeks now.
I told him to come with me.
Yeah.
You
no
know what, guys?
excuses.
I'm trying to get fat, okay? Quit fat shaming me, all right?
Oh my goodness. It's never ending battle. But you have a responsibility to.
No, I'm just kidding.
I hope not. This is pretty PG.
This is
Pretty
PG.
tame. Pretty tame.
We're getting canceled by Big Pharma. That's who we're getting canceled by.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. You get a cease and desist. Never have that guy on ever again. But yeah, you have a personal responsibility to take care of yourself. That's going to limit you. That's going to help you live a better life.
Yep.
Live longer and just enjoy your life more. Honestly, like I get it. Like if you have some genetics, like where you're just predisposed to being, heavier weight because of, your family's genetics, that's something that's out of your control, right?
Right.
But, you could still get in the gym, eat better. Like it's going to take some sacrifice on your end, but you're going to feel better. You're going to look better. Like ultimately what other sales pitches do you need? Like you're going to literally feel better.
Yeah.
And you're going to look better. And that's going to lead to a lot of other benefits in your life.
Right.
But I get it. If you're a really busy person, but you still could do 100 push-ups a day.
I like how he's just staring at me.
Well, I just feel like, big picture, if more people had that frame of mind, we're taking personal responsibility for our fitness and wellness or whatever, I would think the overall cost would come down. Right?
It would,
There would just be less
100%.
demand for those services and they would have to
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, overall, if people did get healthier, you would avoid going to the doctor and having major, like if your blood pressure is in a manageable level, you're going to have less risk for heart disease.
Right.
Yep.
Right. It's just that's a blatant fact. If you have lower blood pressure, you take good care of yourself, you're going to probably reduce your risk. Right. You're not going to completely eliminate risk entirely, but yeah, as a general population, if we got healthier, costs in general would go down.
100%.
And there's a lot of other factors into that too, like kind of like if they were to make some big changes that would help lower costs, create more competition, you know, maybe regulate certain things in a way that's not overbearing, but also there's certain, maybe there definitely needs to be some changes. Yeah. Like we talked about, because the system is not definitely designed right.
Luckily, the United States is no longer the fattest country.
Is Mexico?
Mexico's now beat us.
I wouldn't
We're
have guessed
number
that.
2.
It's amazing. Yeah. Honestly, Coca-Cola products, ironically,
you know, that
in
makes sense.
Mexico are like insanely popular. They love Coca-Cola.
Yep.
What can you say? I mean, Coca-Cola, and you know, at the right time and place, a good cold Coca-Cola is amazing. I'm not gonna lie.
It's the polar bear, dude.
I mean,
with the scarf.
I do love that marketing. I do love that. The glass bottles, they taste so much better in the glass bottles.
Oh, 100%, dude.
Nice cold.
Yeah, you don't get those
never see
microplastics.
Yeah, and I get that. Get all that crap out of here. Glass is, it's clean, right? Come on, you never go wrong with that.
Can't remember where I was going with that, but I was going somewhere with that, and then we got on the Coca-Cola bear, and I forgot. I'll come back to it, I swear.
Fair enough.
By the way, just a forewarning that, you know, most likely there are moments of just great intellect, and then many moments of just rabbit holes in most of these podcasts. Right, Billy?
That's why. You know,
Thank God you warned me.
I did warn you.
You did warn me, so that's good. I like this though.
Well, eventually we come back. You know, it's like this, like whoop. Somebody steers it back to center, and then we go for 5 minutes, and then somebody just, straight divert, dude. It's like,
well, here's the thing. I wouldn't want this to be too formal, like
no.
Give me, you know, your top 10 things to, like, you know, but we can obviously talk.
It's at the very end.
Oh,
top 5, by the way.
Top 5. Okay, thank God. Oh. Numbers is hard for me too, bro. I'm telling you.
Top 5.
Nah, this is it's good to see you guys, and thanks for the invite on it though.
No, I'm glad you came. It's good to get some insight because like it's less fun to stew on conspiracy theories by myself, so it's more fun, you know, that you actually have some knowledge from.
Oh, we can talk conspiracy theories all day, all day.
This is a big deal, right? Like healthcare in general has been a popular topic for a while, and I think the science is more available to us now. We kind of know what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know, there's been a lot of breakthrough discoveries, and I think at this point, the only the lack is just implementation. Like people know what there's. People know you're supposed to eat broccoli over whatever and that kind of stuff. So it's just making those changes.
Well, I think also too, it's just also a sensitive subject for a lot of people, their health, right?
Well,
definitely a sensitive subject.
Anywhere where there's a lack of accountability, people tend to be a little sensitive around that stuff. It's hard conversations to have.
I think it's sensitive only in the fact because you're pointing out the flaw of accountability, right? That's sensitive because they don't want to admit that they, like, the byproduct of their weight and their unhealthiness is the fact that they never did anything to take care of themselves.
It's a compounding of choices.
So and so that they, you know, we experience this, you know, and I'm sure you experience this in the sales world, but like, you know, everybody has, you know, the friends or the family or acquaintances or like business people that they all know that just have a complete lack of accountability on doing something wrong, right? Or, you know, no ownership in something, right? And so it's like, you know, unfortunately, that's a pretty large section of the United States. I mean, like, it's like almost 70-something% of the United States is overweight.
I heard a personal trainer tell one of his clients yesterday he didn't believe in pre-workout. I was like, you don't believe in nutrition?
Yeah, like, so
you can't help some people in that regard.
Yeah, but you know, so they don't want to they want the easy pill, right? They want the Ozempic, right? Because
example.
You know, but we all know, and the science has proven that at the end of the day, no matter what diet or fad diet or pill you take, right, it's never going to work long term unless you change your habits. Right? To work out and eat healthy, right? But that takes commitment, discipline, self-accountability, right? Unless you're in jail, you know, then there's a lot of accountability.
3 square meals a day.
Yeah.
Free housing.
Yeah. Yep. You know, so it's like, you know, but a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't want that. They want to be able to just be like, doc, prescribe me something I can just take once a day, you know, a quick pill, whatever, shot in the ass once a week, and then that's it.
And that's certainly an American luxury.
That is an American luxury.
And I think ultimately, that I think could be the downfall of this entire thing is this people literally just trying to make it
They
easy.
want it now.
They want it now. Instant gratification with anything. It's
Everything. Food, social media, phone use.
Everything.
I mean, everything.
one of those luxuries that I can't live without is definitely DoorDash, though. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I feel that.
Hey, you're creating jobs.
That's right. I'm stimulating the economy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think our economy is really kind of derived into that service-based economy.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder what the ultimate, if we don't kind of change how we as an economy are going, I kind of have some concerns on
Did you see the projections for service-based businesses?
exploding, right?
Yeah, they projected it was going to increase by like 50 to 70%.
But I don't know if that's is that good for the country?
Makes you wonder,
I don't know.
you know.
I don't know. Like one of the things I think about when it comes to where the country's going, I think it is interesting to see how, not to get super political on this, but like how we can make changes to make these really good jobs in manufacturing come back.
Yeah.
And, that's my hope is that we can bring some of these jobs that actually create stuff here.
Yeah.
I'm concerned that we're not creating enough because you look at, like, I was watching a video on the UK, they don't produce anything. Their economy is in shambles right now. And that's what I'm concerned about these Western nations. If you're not creating something of value that you take to the market, it's going to be taken. It's going to go overseas. Of course,
somebody else is going to do it,
and it's going to be cheaper to do and cheaper to make somewhere else. I mean, you just see, like, any of your clothes that you buy nowadays, they're not made in the United States.
Yeah,
it's been that way for a long time, but still,
there's a strong point. So, like TikTok, one of the main reasons that it wasn't purchased by an American company is because China, they have kind of the I don't want to say monopoly, but kind of a monopoly on the goods. So like all those cheap Chinese things that you're seeing on TikTok, all those advertisements.
Yeah, Tumi.
Yeah, Tumi, exactly that. So that shop part of it is all Chinese based, right? And so it's all Chinese products, and they're cheap.
Sorry, Temu,
that's the one.
Tumi, that's not right.
Something like that.
it's close enough.
But that same model wouldn't work in America because we
It
can't
would not.
manufacture those.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons why, and I think those are some of the reasons are good. Like they don't treat their workers with the same, respect, wages, living conditions, working conditions. China, I don't know if you've seen some of the pictures of the living conditions that some of these Chinese workers have. It's like slave
Brutal.
labor.
Have you seen the videos from the iPhone factory where they put the net around the roof to keep them from jumping off?
Jumping off, committing suicide.
Wild,
jumping
dude.
off,
Oh yeah, it's
very blessed.
Yeah.
To be an American in that
100%. Yeah. I finally remembered what I was thinking. By the way,
Nice job.
thank you.
Here we go.
Get ready for this nugget. I feel like we are 100% moving into the movie Idiocracy.
Yeah, we have been for a minute, I think.
Yep. That's a documentary, not fiction.
It's a documentary. It's close.
Maybe not to that like degree right now.
No, not now. But I just
That
feel like
movie's like it's beyond ridiculous.
It is.
It's beyond ridiculous. And I don't know if you know this. So the costume designer. I remember I saw this story. It was hilarious.
oh, was this the
Crocs.
the Crocs?
Did you hear about this?
No.
So apparently the costume designer for the movie was trying to make like fine shoes that were so ridiculous that there was no way, except in this reality of the movie, would people would wear these.
Yeah.
It was Crocs.
Interesting.
And then
I have a pair of those.
and look at that. And
I don't have a pair.
And then
Levi's
they got
got
popular.
2 pair.
They got popular, and sure enough, now you see every kid wearing Crocs.
Yeah, and now they got the damn pins you attach to those
Yeah.
things, dude. And they're
You know when I got a pair of Crocs, I had gone on
Ridiculous.
this moose hunt, and the guy I was moose hunting with, we went to cross the river, and he pulled some Crocs out of his bag.
Interesting.
oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
They float. They're cheap.
Is he chilling at camp with the Crocs on too? Just walking around in
Yeah,
camp?
let your feet breathe, man.
Yeah.
Waterproof.
Well, it's good because you don't have to get your boots wet, right? And you don't have to do it barefoot and like risk cutting your feet or something. when you're
Yeah,
in the
no
field.
kidding. Yeah, that
That is
genius.
Pretty slick, but they're so small, and they're
they're
super
lightweight.
light, and they're light, so you can
Super
fit
light.
them back.
Super light.
So.
The
if
Croc heels. Is that what he busted out?
No, but when I saw them, I was like, man, I'm getting some of those. After this.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good alternative to Crocs because I think the Crocs look so dumb. I'm
They're little
sorry.
bu- they're little
I'm
bulky. Yeah,
sorry.
they do.
I just can't do it. UFOs. It's a shoe brand that Trent actually got me onto. He's wearing these, slides that were like super comfy. He's like, have you ever seen these? It's spelled OOFOS.
I'll have to check it out.
And they're basically, I think the company started out as, similar to Crocs, but it's like more like orthopedic footwear for like when
Interesting.
if you're like dealing with a sports injury. So it's like super cushiony, but it gives you the right support. And they have like sandals, like slides. They have like just similar to Crocs, like kind of like over the, like they like you can just slip them on like that, but it covers your whole toe.
That's cool.
And they're so comfy.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
You'll have to text that to me.
I will. They're amazing. I love those things. Yeah, their flip flops are the best.
Nice.
Insanely good. Oh my gosh, the best. You won't go back.
I used to have some cool flip flops. They had a bottle opener, but you always get sand in your.
Those are the Reefs one. Those are the Reefs.
I know what you're talking about. The Reefs. Yeah, I had a pair of those.
Yeah.
I lost them in Philippines.
Oh, you did. That's right.
I did leave them there, and I bought a $3 pair that were awful. That were not even my size.
Some thongs.
No, they literally they didn't have my shoes. My shoe size was like this. They was like a 9. That's the biggest they had. I'm at 11.
All
They're
toes
like,
on there.
sorry,
To be fair,
this is all we have. It's $3 though.
Yeah, I felt big in the Philippines.
Your giant American feet.
Yeah, they're like, we've never seen feet this big. You should have seen Andre the Giant's. I mean, that would have been. They were like, what are we like 4 shoes combined to make his?
Dude,
shoes?
yeah. Philippines is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the Philippines.
I definitely want to go back.
But you didn't see a whole lot of
I missed El Nido, which you guys liked, or Boracay.
Boracay. But you didn't see a whole lot of overweight Filipinos.
No, they make $4 a day. They
Yeah, I
can't
know,
afford to
but-
eat a lot.
But it's also that they're walking everywhere. It's they're working. Like it's.
And I can't imagine
yeah.
their food is super processed, but I guess I don't know
No,
either. So
everything was
Noodles. It's noodles, chicken,
rice,
maybe
chicken,
if you're lucky.
a lot of chicken.
that's like eating clean, or my version of it here.
Yeah. But I mean, you just don't have the the lifestyle that is so. I think people take America for granted on how easy Americans really truly live.
Oh my gosh.
And you can always tell who takes the United States for granted and who's never really traveled outside the United States, especially to second world, third world countries,
That'll change
and realize how people truly live in the rest of the world.
It was one of the best things I did as a young person.
Yeah.
Gave me a lot of perspective.
Yeah,
A ton of
the
perspective.
poorest person in the United States is richer than 70% of the rest of the world.
I just
Dude,
read that recently. It
reality.
said
Wild.
if you make more than $40,000 a year, you're top 1% for the entire
in the
world.
world,
Yep.
which
Insane.
is a majority of the United States.
And then you look at the median income here in Anchorage, you're like,
It's like what, 60, 50
it's
something?
pretty high. I think the combined median is like 118 or something.
yeah,
For like a family?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
which is a ton of money in a lot of places.
Well, if you want to talk about that, I mean, it's like difficult. Some of my coworkers have young children, and they're both working. I can't. I mean, you have a young you have a young family, right? It's like, how difficult is that to
Childcare is
manage the
expensive.
kids?
I asked myself that every month. I was like, how do people make this work?
Totally. I don't know. I genuinely wonder because I don't have kids, and
Well, childcare is so expensive. So, like for us, we switch schedules so that we don't have childcare because when I was looking and pricing it out, it costs more for her to work, and basically we would be at a loss for her to go to work because of the childcare.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, hey, okay, well, I'll work, we'll switch off days or whatever. So like Monday, Tuesday, I'll stay home, work from home, and I have the baby so she can go in the office, and then we switch off at the second half of the week. But like, I can't even imagine what that. To make our budget work with an extra $1,000 or $1,500 or whatever that might be.
yeah, I do not know how people make it with that. I mean, that's another area. I'm like, wow, why is it gone up so much? I don't know. That's a genuine question I have.
Employee costs, man.
Yeah. Insurance. It always comes back
Employee
to
costs and
insurance.
then insurance.
Yeah.
Benefits.
Benefits is not
Benefits
cheap.
package are almost as much as the employee.
And yeah, in some cases, yeah.
It's wild.
That is wild.
Yeah. Well, any other nuggets you got for us in the insurance world? You got some stats?
What was the biggest topic there at your conference?
Ooh, that's a good
AI
question.
there was a presented on AI
Yeah.
and how it integrates. And I think that's actually an area where I think there could be a lot of, utility and innovation in AI with how the systems and also the data. That's probably one of the biggest things. It's like the data needs to flow better
Right.
between the providers and whatnot. So that could be an optimization that could actually cut costs.
Yeah.
We had a nutritionist come on. She was pretty interesting. We had a facilities panel on the biggest hospitals CEOs that came and talked to us about what
Nice.
they're dealing with. And yeah, I mean, it's difficult for hospitals to staff people in Alaska. That comes back to, why costs are so high.
Yeah.
They use a lot of traveling providers here.
A lot of traveling
ton.
nurses. Yeah,
They
traveling
have a
nurses.
hard
And they're-
time, I think, keeping them on.
They're expensive.
and they're expensive, right? So, I mean, that's a big deal. Like if you're in a market with like a plethora of medical professionals and it's, supply and demand, right? It's going to be probably a little bit less to, staff those facilities and, serve that community. And we don't have that. I mean, think about how hard it is to get a person to live in Nome and work in the hospital in Nome,
Right.
Yeah.
as an example.
Well, and it comes down to
That's
lifestyle, and we're suffering that same thing in Anchorage, right? It's like, how do you keep skilled people here? What lifestyle and are we providing, and what opportunities are we giving these people?
Well,
Yeah.
so just a little personal history on me. I grew up in the Seattle area and I moved to Anchorage in June of 2013. And so I've been here just over 11 years now.
Yeah.
And I remember like going to AEDC one of those first couple of years and like, oh, Alaska's like Anchorage is one of the like best places to live and all these different metrics.
Yeah.
Definitely fallen off of that
Falling
place.
off that mighty horse.
And I definitely am concerned long term for Alaska and Anchorage specifically in that regard, because a lot of people, young people, don't want to live here anymore.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, it's just not as fun
It's tough.
for people. You can make a great living. You can
Make
do
good
really
money.
There's
well. Yeah,
good
but that's not
opportunities.
everything.
There's
Yeah.
good opportunities
Great
here.
opportunity. Yeah.
Amazing opportunities. And that's why I'm pretty bullish on, some of our, our mutual friends, business colleagues.
Yeah.
That are, relatively young for their, for their business and their enterprise. But if you're a young person and you don't really have the skill set or the drive to really go out there, if you just want to have fun, this is not the place for you, I don't think, personally.
Yeah, like nightlife, downtown fun, all that. It's almost non-existent here in Anchorage.
And it's changed a lot. That's one of the things I've noticed too. Like from like 2015, 16 was a lot of fun. I think that was like a really fun time to
Yeah.
be going out. The oil price. I do remember when oil prices dipped in 2015. That definitely changed kind of the vibe.
Yeah, I did.
Here in general. But, I just remember things were just better when just hanging out, doing stuff, going like, remember Bernie's bungalow was a lot of fun back in the day.
Yep.
In the summertime it was packed, line like all the way around the street. I just don't think younger people, these Gen Zers that
They're
are
not
coming
getting
up,
out.
they're not going out because they can't afford it too. Like you gotta be honest.
expensive.
It's
It's
expensive.
expensive. And it's like
Yeah.
I saw kind of during COVID, that was kind of where things started to compartmentalize, right? So it's like,
Well, I mean, you
if
had
not,
to.
if not slightly before that, but it's like then you really had to. And it's like I was noticing that. I was like, there's a lot of stuff happening, but you just have to know where it is.
Right.
Correct.
Right. There's like always galas and there's all this dress up stuff all over the place. There's all kinds of events and fundraisers and stuff like that we know about because we're in the industry. But
Right.
for the most person, they don't realize that that's happening.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of, I do pity the younger generation because they dealt with COVID. And like, I grew up in the 90s. I'm 31 years old, almost 32 in April. And it just seemed like as technology's increased, there's even data to support how much time we spend on our phones and our devices.
Oh my gosh,
computers.
don't look at my screen time.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, if you think about like between the time you're looking at your computer screen, all day, or your phone, and then
Yep.
you go home, you're watching TV, it's just a ton of time. And
Lot.
then I have like some of my family members that have younger kids. They could just sit there and just veg for hours.
Yeah.
And I'm granted, like I'm a victim of that too. Like I'm
Yeah.
not going to sit here and act like I'm not addicted to my devices too. I think it's just the nature
Everybody
of the
is.
beast.
Yeah.
Right. But, I do think that COVID had a very, very negative effect on younger people and their development, young kids.
I agree. You're right about that.
Well, and the social part of it, right? Like,
Yeah. Sad. It's really sad how we basically said, kids, you're just going to sit here in your house for 2 years.
and it's
That's
affecting
crazy.
our community, right? Because
is.
these people are, the folks that would contribute, so to speak, and because they're not, and they're so tied into their devices, they're ignoring the people that are next to them. Even on the road, it's kind of wild. How many distracted drivers,
Yeah.
they really
Oh my
aggregate.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
On a daily, actually, one of the stats I did want to talk about, this is from the Commonwealth Fund study. They do all these for every state. And Alaska's like in the back half of
course.
these kind of statistics.
We're always on we're always the first of something not great.
It doesn't seem like,
Like top 10.
West Virginia,
How about
believe it or
Florida?
not, is like West Virginia's on one of the worst for everything.
like
Really? I
suicide,
found that out.
sexual assault, all that stuff. We're pretty.
Yes, but youth with depression who did not receive mental health services was When they did this study, they said 56%.
Whoa, that's an alarming
Jesus.
And I saw that, I immediately highlighted that. I was like, that is not good.
Yeah.
So 56% of the people that need
They interviewed,
mental health
that they interviewed for this.
weren't getting that care.
And then adults with mental illness who did not receive treatment was 55%.
That's huge.
And I think honestly, like what they talked about here is adults who went without care because of cost was 11.2%. I think that's a lower number than probably.
Probably the disclosure on that might be not.
Huh.
You know, I would think that, that would be a hard one to capture accurately.
Well, I think COVID too, there for a while between 2020 and 2022 for my business,
Yeah.
a lot of the carriers, basically gave people a rate pass, which rate pass means you get a no increase
Right.
on your premiums. And then we started getting major increases. And that, I think there was a couple reasons for that from the carrier's perspective. They just wanted things easy because there was so much chaos going on.
A lot of unsureness.
Yeah. And so they were just basically just like, hey, we're going to, rate pass, this year. They also didn't want a lot of movement because it's a lot of work to onboard a client for both the carrier and the client and a broker to move carriers.
Yeah.
Because you have to change the
Everything.
network. You have to give people ID cards, new ID cards.
Yep.
There's a lot of factors. So for them, it was just a lot easier just to move forward with the renewal, give them a rate pass in a lot of cases. But that's when you started seeing like 2023, 2024, now 2025.
Yep.
There was kind of a mitigation of care, and I think that was on purpose or otherwise from the employees and people in general, just not wanting to get certain things checked out. There was a lot of people that said, "Hey, I'm not gonna go in for my checkups because there's too much work, or I'm scared to go out of my house." There's
a lot of chronic stuff that just got missed.
So yeah,
surgeries,
surgery
stuff.
elective
that,
surgeries is a big one. So now you're seeing kind of the windfall of that, the effects of that now too. So that's another factor as to why costs have gone up more so these last couple of years because there's
makes sense. Yeah, understandable. Okay, we're at the point in our episode. Do we ask him now or in a few minutes? Do we give him an alley-oop?
Yeah, let's do the alley-oop. I think it's fair.
What are you cooking up here? What are you doing?
No, okay. So every episode, we always ask every single guest that comes on, right? I understand you don't own Hub International. If you did, I would expect cooler trips.
Wait, say that again?
I said, I understand that you don't own Hub International, right? But if you did, I would expect cooler trips.
Cooler?
Yeah,
trips?
like more, private yacht, go on your jet,
If I owned Hub International,
Yes.
there would be without a doubt
Cooler trips.
cooler trips.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is
Yachts
okay.
probably would be included.
Yes.
Yes.
So what I'm getting at is, obviously most of the time we have like a business owner or whatever on it,
I get
right?
it. I get why you asked the
So,
question. I get it.
but we always ask, if there's 5 things you've learned in business or like, as an entrepreneur, like if you were going to give 5 tips to like an entrepreneur or business owner,
Okay.
what would those be? But like you've been in the business for a while and you're almost kind of like, and when you're doing sales, it's almost like you're running your own business anyways.
Oh, 100%.
And you're a young guy. You've accomplished
Yeah.
a lot in your short period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
By the way, single ladies.
Yeah, whatever. 5 things. I would say, number 1, I mean, you really have to be invested in the success of your business in terms of you have to be willing to make sacrifices on certain areas to achieve success in business, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to do all the fun things that other people are doing on a constant basis. There's always an excuse
Yep.
to go out and do something fun, but
Yep.
you have to really, really have a goal in mind and pursue it, and then be willing to take on the challenges and setbacks that come out. That's more a mindset. Number 2, being in sales, ultimately it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing I think young people in the business or in sales don't quite grasp. They think, oh, I had a great meeting with this person. It's definitely going to close. Like, I don't need to make more sales calls this week.
Huh. This sounds so familiar, Billy.
I think you're on point with that.
Yeah.
And especially when you're young and you're just starting out. So I started out when I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
Making cold calls to businesses, which was brutal.
Yeah.
Like brutal. And now you're making 50 to 100 calls a day to get appointments. And the goal was to get 5 appointments with businesses a week to stay alive, 10 to thrive. That was the saying, right?
Yeah.
So ideally in a good week, you had 10 appointments And so you're running that. You're still making your calls in between these appointments. But, ultimately you have to do whatever business that you're in, sales, you have to get in front of qualified prospective buyers.
Yeah.
Qualified. I use that word deliberately because just because you meet with somebody that's like your buddy, that's not going to, actually make a good sale to keep you going, then it's not worth it. Like, don't kid yourself. Don't lie to yourself and say, oh, I'll meet with this, 2-person company and write $1 million in revenue. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be smart. You have to be willing to, be dedicated to finding those, and they're hard. Like, there's more competition. The higher up you go in up market with any business, there's more competition, obviously.
Yep.
But you have to also be willing to make mistakes and learn from the mistakes.
Okay.
And when I say willing, don't obviously deliberately make a mistake just to learn from it. I want to have a disclaimer. Some people are like, well,
So we'll count that as 2.
Marshall said-
We'll count that as 2 because that was like a caveat.
that was a caveat.
So that would be 2. So how about 3?
3. Take care of your personal appearance. Like, that's honestly for young guys.
Gosh.
Oh my goodness. I see young dudes. It's not just like, I'm just picking on the guys because that's just,
Well, I get it. Like,
I don't-
can't be 3 dudes talking about the ladies. So it's
yeah. I'm
let's
just
just
saying,
pick on the dudes.
I'm just saying, I think this
Don't
is,
cancel us.
yes, please. But I think it's relevant because I remember, growing up and being in sales initially. I remember, this is a funny memory. I remember I showed up, 3 Bears Grocery was one of our clients.
Yeah.
And I showed up we're meeting with all the employees to talk to them about their, insurance plans that were available. And I'm wearing like a suit and tie. My mom looks at me, she's like, what are you doing? These are just normal people that maybe would want to buy a policy for $30-$40 a month. You got to be honestly kind of just slightly above them in terms of your professionalism with what you wear, given who you're talking to.
Right.
So if you're talking to an average person at a body shop, trying to sell them on whatever it is that you're selling.
Yeah, right. Get out of here, suit.
Yeah, you don't want to be wearing a pinstripe suit.
Or do you?
Trust me, dude. Don't you want to be again, like I said, slightly above.
You want to be relatable.
And
Yes.
I think and what comes with that is experience, and how you get there is trying and learning from mentors too. And I don't know that we could talk about that one later, but I mean, just really honestly try to put yourself in that person's shoes when you're talking to somebody that you're sitting across from them. Would I buy from me if I were to give this, pitch, or, would I be able to, relate to this person or like this person?
Yeah.
In order to do business with somebody, you got to like them and trust them.
100%.
And then you can, start to get about going about
Build
making
rapport.
a sale. And honestly, the internet is such a treasure trove of knowledge in that regard.
100%.
You really don't have an excuse when it comes to that. You put it on, going back to personal responsibility. It's up to you to bone up your knowledge, find credible sources. If you don't know, ask somebody that you look up to and say, hey, I see you're really successful in business. Like, if a young guy in real estate were to come to you and say, hey, Justin, I need help, I'm sure you'd be willing to give them, because I know you as a person.
Yeah.
You'd be like, yeah, dude, I'll definitely give you some tips, just like we're doing right now,
Yeah.
to help you in business. I mean, look at all the successful people that write autobiographies about themselves and how they did it.
Yeah.
All the information, successful people want to tell you about
Nuggets.
how they made it.
Nuggets in those things.
And so I've read a ton of, books on, sales through my career over time, self-improvement, how to be better as a, human being. Like, the better you get as a person, the more you're going to do, the better you're going to do in business.
It's those transferable skills that make the difference.
And I think too, the young people listening, if there are any young people that are curious about how to get better, you really have to just think about your habits. How do your habits translate to success in your business? And that's something that we all have to work on constantly too.
100%.
Like, nobody's perfect in this regard.
Nope.
I don't care how successful somebody is. There's always something that they could be working on.
Yep.
I don't care who you're talking to. But there's tons of knowledge out there from credible sources that you can find. And so kind of that self-mastery piece of it is something that, I don't know, something that just clicked for me. I was like, okay, I want to be successful. I had the drive, I had the vision. And so I knew I had to do,
Put the work in.
put the work in on that regard. But I don't know. Is that an innate quality? Is that nature versus nurture kind of thing? I don't know. Like, I don't know where
I
that
feel like
comes
it
from.
comes from people that have a hard time. Like,
Interesting.
Maybe not always, but it seems like drive is one of the things you can't teach. And, and oftentimes it comes from a place of like desperation or something bad happened to you.
Yeah, or like it's witnessed. Like I lived a pretty comfortable life growing up. I wasn't like my parents weren't well off, right? But my dad worked his ass off, right? And so that's what I saw, right? Was just a role model, right? Who worked his tail off to provide for his family, right? And so now all of my siblings, including myself, have this just innate drive of just work, really solid work ethic. I know exactly where that came from. It came from my father, right? Because my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So, I agree, yes, because you either like gotta come from the trenches, man, and work your way out, right? And there is a certain quality of just pulling yourself by the bootstraps and then doing it, or you've just got an awesome role model somewhere in life early on through your childhood that instilled that quality in you, right? So. Yeah,
I would agree with that. I think ultimately, there are certain things that we have, in genetics, and like you said, like you have certain things, certain qualities. Your personality is your personality.
Yeah.
You can certainly work on certain things like communication skills and whatnot. But I agree. It's so interesting, because there's perfect examples of people that came from nothing that achieved great success. There's examples of people that came from certainly well-off situations that achieved massive success. So I don't know if there's a secret ingredient per se, but I know the fact that what is definitely an ingredient in that is a vision and then the discipline to continue pursuing it, even when you're getting, taking haymakers to the face, because it's definitely a thing. I mean, I think we can all agree in our business life, you've done things you like sit there, look to yourself like, why the hell did I do that? And then you could easily just say, I'm done. I'm just going to quit, but it's never over until you quit, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think, there's a lot that I remember there's 2 times specifically my mom and I started we moved her insurance agency to Anchorage from the Washington area. And there was 2 times in the course of our working together that we like basically were this close to being broke. And we needed something to happen.
Yeah.
We needed a big sale. And I'm talking like we like needed something bad. Just for like a morale perspective. Just looking at your bank account, you're like, wow, we're close.
Yeah.
Like, do I need to ask friends and family for money to pay the rent? And sure enough, by the grace of the universe, grace of God, I don't know what it was, we landed something that really just saved our bacon. And so it's funny. I mean, I don't know. You look at that, you're like, wow, how did that actually happen? Well, it's a combination of working hard and keeping with, your system and your work ethic, but also too, there's some innate kind of things that happen too, like luck. I kind of believe in that a little bit of the luck aspect. Sometimes it's nice to get some things happen that come.
I feel like you make your own luck. You know what I mean? Like luck happens because you've created the environment for the luck to happen. Right. Like, and like this is like the sales cycles, right? Like real estate is a long sales cycle. I'm sure insurance is probably a long sales cycle too, right? And so you see this with agents all the time, and that's like this wave of just like, I'm comfortable. Now I don't have anything coming in.
I'm
barely treading water, right? And then all this work comes out of that bottom of the trough, and then they're right to the top of the wave again. Like
that's where I do my best work, at the bottom.
And so it's like this, and you try to teach and coach them to just listen. If you just have a set discipline of how much work to do every single day, right? Like you won't do this constantly, right? Like you're not like Cloud9 and then bottom of the sea, Little Mermaid, and then back on land, right? Like, and then you are flounder again, right? Like it's just be consistent, But at the same time, like I know a lot of people who are successful and they just create their own.
I agree.
They create the environment that they're in, right?
I certainly agree. Yeah, your habits and the work that you put in and if it's consistent enough, you will achieve success. And I mean, sales is one of those things where it's like
Always
even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Right.
I've had some people that I've seen that they give the worst pitch I've ever seen in my life, and they still get it. And you're like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
Certainly.
That's a good way to think about it.
But they just pitch so much,
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've hit 4. So fifth one.
I would say if you can find a mentor in the business that you're in.
That's the one you were talking about. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I've been very fortunate in my career, starting off with my mom. My mom was an insanely good sales manager.
Yeah.
And ran her business. And I learned a ton from my mom. And I'm very fortunate to have that experience because I've had friends from high school that are like, dude, like you got so lucky with your mom. Like my mom did not do me any nepotism favors at all. In fact, she rode me harder than everybody else because I was her son.
Yeah, you had to prove it.
And I'm very thankful for that looking back because, she was a great mentor for me in that time where I needed to find the discipline. And she was a very disciplined person. And when it comes to the business side of it, you're making X number of calls. Every Monday we'd have a call clinic with everybody in the office. And then, you still have to make your calls Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to lead to the result, whatever the results. And it was very analytical in the sense that you're going to have to make a certain amount of calls, right? Going back to the numbers game aspect of it.
Yeah.
So early on in my career, I knew what it's going to take to achieve success. And I had a specific example in my own mom that had achieved said success that I wanted.
Right.
And, now in the brokerage side, I've been working with a brokerage firm. It was July of 2019. So July will be 6 years on the broker side.
Nice. Okay.
And I was lucky enough, like literally my second day in, we had a big sales meeting at my former firm with all the guys from Seattle that had, done really well. It had big books of business.
Right.
Been in the business a long time.
Yeah.
These are guys I immediately
Heavy
looked
hitters.
up to.
Yeah.
Right. And I immediately found a mentor because him and I, kind of had very similar mindsets around, the sales part of it. And then as we worked together, we really got to know each other and became really good friends. And he's still my mentor to this day. We work at Hub together. I think if you can find a mentor in your business that you look up to, that is ethical, that's a huge piece of it. You got to find somebody that's going to be honest and do right by, people that they're working for and with. And if you find that mentor and they are open and willing to coach you and help you, that's going to cut out so much time in the whole cycle of your growth in the business or in your personal life as well. There's a lot of things. And I am a believer that you can learn something from everybody.
Right.
Literally everybody in some way, whether it be good or bad lessons, right? Like what not to do. I think it's a big thing too, is you need to learn what not to do and don't make the same mistake that somebody else is making if you've seen it, right? Like, I don't know, like, hey, like be observant of what's going on and like, okay, I don't want to make that mistake.
That's good advice.
Like my parents got in trouble with the IRS back when I was a kid, and I remember them telling me about it. I'm like, I'm never going to get in trouble with the IRS. I'm going to do my taxes on time every year because of the stress I saw it put on them. That's just one example, right?
Yeah. Government swings a pretty big, so it's not good.
You're not wrong, though. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the thing for me is find a mentor in the business that you look up to. But and I think approaching that mentor, especially if it's like even a quasi competitor, you have to be very tactful and careful with how you do that, right? But if you can find, and maybe it's not even somebody you know personally, a virtual mentor.
But people that are successful, like you said, with the technology and everything, they're doing audiobooks and all kinds of stuff. You can jump right on that train.
Well, like most of the stuff that they're going to teach you is not super detailed info, right? Like it's more like overview of how to like really kind of control your life and be disciplined, right? And how to formulate your life for success. I mean, because that's all the stuff they've learned, is how to create the life that makes them successful. It's not like, all the detailed, super high level education stuff. It's the consistency, the discipline, self-accountability, right? Like time blocking, be, all those things lining up, connecting yourself with the proper relationships,
And these are life skills, not just work.
Yeah, that's what they're teaching you. That's what they're mostly mentoring you on. Of course, and then like if it's in your business, like in your sector, right, they're going to teach you some other stuff on how to like increase sales, talk to people. But I'm like, most often than not, it's not, super minutia, detailed, business specific things.
Right. I feel like my sales journey has been a self-improvement kind of
Yeah,
thing.
100%, man.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think the biggest thing too I see young people struggle with is communication skills.
Oh gosh, big time.
Like it's really shocking to see how bad these young kids are coming out. They don't know how, and I don't know, maybe from my upbringing, I was around my older family a lot. Like, people I look up to, like my uncles, my grandfathers. I had a good relationship with my grandparents. Thank goodness, I'm very blessed in that regard. So I had a lot of people that I really could aspire to be. And like, we had a lot of conversations just as like, human beings talking. And this is before, obviously,
Cell
the
phones.
smartphones. Yeah. So maybe that's definitely a factor.
That's how they communicate. Snapchat, text, like all that,
Yeah, short form.
But if you talk to kids nowadays, they're not as confident as I think, the 90s kids.
They're shy.
What's that?
Like in person.
Yes,
Like
very shy.
Very shy. I mean, like it feels like it's.
It's palpable. You're right about that.
But when you see somebody that's young and they have those skills, you're like, wow. Like,
Yeah, I know.
It's refreshing to see that.
Yeah. You're
And
like,
those are
you'll-
things
you'll
you
kill
can
it.
work on.
Like you can have a conversation in person. Like you'll do well, right? You can take criticism,
That's
a big one.
huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, communication skills is huge.
Yeah.
That's something, again, everybody can work on too.
Let's see. Well, if there is, so let's clarify. So for people you're looking for
Okay.
your business,
Okay.
let's clarify what, if like they wanted to find you, email you, and then like what specifically would you help a business do?
I would say I'm always open to talking and helping businesses, even if it's just advice, right?
Okay.
If you're a business owner and you just want to ask like a question or two and just say, hey, like what would you do in this scenario? Always open to having a conversation. You can email me, give me a call. I can give you, if, I don't know how you want me to
Just say
distribute it
right to the microphone.
masses. Yeah. So my phone number is 907-348-1108. That's my office line. So if you're a business, you just want to ask me a question, feel free to give me a call, leave me a voicemail. But in terms of like what I can do to help a business, what's like my ideal, company or client, definitely somebody that's like around 25 or more employees.
Okay.
Is usually my company we do smaller companies. Absolutely. We can help out businesses of all sizes, but to work with my entire team, which gives you a ton of support, usually you're going to want to work with somebody over 25 employees.
Got it.
And honestly, no industries don't matter. Like property and casualty, talking commercial insurance, like that kind of a commercial insurance is more, it's very industry specific type of coverages that you're looking for. So if you have like an offshore oil rig, way more complex than if you own an auto body shop. But so in that regard, it doesn't matter whether you own a daycare or you're a CEO of a hospital. We more than happy to talk with you if you have a business that's around 25 or more employees. Cool. In terms of really kind of getting into the weeds, talking about what you guys really need for group benefits and things like that. So
nice. Billy, you got anything?
No, it was fun.
Yeah, I think we hit many rabbit holes.
Well, that's good.
I liked it. I liked it.
That's why the fun
bunny
stuff-
hopped in between a lot of them.
We did, dude. Didn't even hit ground. I think we just tunneled to the next one.
Snuck our way through all that very well. I don't think you're going to get canceled this one, but I've seen stranger things happen. But I don't know.
Oh, our next one, I don't know. Our next one might stir the pot.
I heard it might be pretty spicy.
Yeah. Next one's gonna be a little spicy. Sorry, Billy. Billy's in for it, dude.
I'm in.
He's always down.
Controversy sells, man.
That's why I'm here.
I know. Yeah. Billy's ride or die.
Love it.
Well, cool, dude. I appreciate you coming on.
No, thank you.
Thanks for all the nuggets.
I hope it was helpful for the listeners. I really do.
No, man. I think it's good.
I think it's cool, man. Thanks for being a good example. As an ethical role model.
Appreciate it. No, absolutely. I hope this, gets out there, and I hope people get some value out of it. And, I'll be around, and I'm going to encourage, people.
Oh, give them your email. So I can,
Oh, yes. My email is marshall.pickering@hubinternational.com.
cool. Awesome, man.
Appreciate
Later,
it.
guys.
Thank you much.